The winter wind over the Welsh coast gnawed at the stone cliffs, wailing its warning like something half human, half elemental. The year was 1899. The lighthouse of St. James stood sentry on that battered shore, a lone, pale pillar of brick above the restless black waves. Most nights, its beacon burned with unwavering regularity, a comfort to merchant captains and fishermen navigating those treacherous northern waters. But as December settled over the land, a new and disturbing pattern emerged. For weeks, passing vessels logged the anomaly. The beacon's steady rhythm began to falter, flickering in uneven bursts, throbbing in sequences no signalman could decipher. Some claimed the light mimicked a heartbeat, pulsing with sudden urgency, as if spelling out a silent distress. Others swore it spelled words, a strange language flashing over the surf, tempting fate for any soul who would attempt translation. Snow fell thick on the roof of the lantern room, and the keepers, men who had weathered 100 coastal storms, seemed to vanish inside, leaving no signal, no flags, no reassurance for the mainland. By mid-December, local fishermen refused to sail within sight of the tower. They said the lamp had started to call them by name. In the nearby village, rumors spread like wildfire. The lighthouse was haunted, marked, forsaken. Old women locked their shutters against the beam, shaking as the light swept over their chimneys. Some remembered the stories, legends of ancient rites buried within the cliffs, voices that called from beneath the stones, not above the sea. Still, the government dismissed the reports as superstition and assigned a Coast Guard vessel to investigate, its orders clear and simple: ensure the safety of the keepers, restore the light. Nothing more, nothing less. The rescue team arrived on a morning of freezing fog, their boat scraping the rocks below the tower. They expected the usual, routine neglect, a sticky mechanism, perhaps a sickly lamp keeper eager for home. But as they approached, a chill clung to their bones. The door to the lighthouse was ajar, drifted with salt and snow. Silence pressed down, broken only by the echo of distant waves. The men entered, flashlights trembling in their hands, finding only darkness, and the faint smell of burning tallow mixed with copper, as if some ritual had lingered in the air. Low on the horizon, the beacon blinked once, and then faded. The island seemed empty, but everyone who set foot on the threshold felt watched, as if the rocks themselves remembered. No one spoke as they climbed the winding stairs. At the top, beyond the lantern glass, the sky was metallic and angry, and the sea below spat foam against the stone with hungry regularity. The keepers were nowhere to be found. When the rescue team descended again, the door slammed in the wind, and their footprints disappeared beneath fresh snow. Every man in the party carried a sense of dread, remembering the heartbeat of the lamp, the unnatural hush, and the realization that some mysteries, once awakened, never sleep again. By early December of the year 1899, the air over the island thickened, the salt, the frost, and something metallic merged into a pressure that made each breath feel weighted. The rescue vessel landed with a crunch on glassy stones, its crew blinking against the sea spray and the chill, bracing as if for battle. The shape of the lighthouse loomed, surrounded by snow that clung to the walls like pale, frozen skin. Even before they approached the door, the men noticed strange remnants, lengths of burned rope twisted near the foundation, pools of wax where dozens of candles had melted into the stone, a half-charred scrap of cloth pressed into the ice. They climbed toward the entrance and found it unbolted, not flung open, but as if someone had hurriedly unlatched it and never looked back. The wood stuck in place, slick as though wet from within. When at last they forced it wide, a wave of old tallow mingled with sharp rot poured out and washed over them. The wind howled just outside, but in the corridor the silence pressed in, sticky and impenetrable. Inside, the air was colder than any of them had known. Snow had drifted through the cracks, settling in small heaps behind the barricades of furniture. At the far end of the main room sat the first keeper. He rested upright in a battered wooden chair, eyes glazed white, his face gaunt with waxy skin stretched tight over bone. On the table in front of him, a journal lay open to a page half filled with looping, frantic script. One of the men bent closer. The final line seemed unfinished, the tip of the pen still nestled in a puddle of viscous ink. No trace of violence marred the scene. The keeper's hands, rigid in brittle fists, showed no wounds. Across the room, a lantern burned low, its flame trembling but alive. The windows reflected only snow and the pale, flickering light. There was no sign of anyone who might have witnessed the keeper's last hours. Above, the ceiling dripped with condensation, the stone sweating cold water that pooled beneath the journals, the boots, and the scattered melted wax. As the crew moved deeper into the lighthouse, the sense of abandonment grew more visceral. Only one thing felt out of place. The base of the staircase was splattered with old soot, as if something had recently burned. No footprints traveled up or down. The rescue team paused in the gloom, watching the shadows race over the keeper's still face and the idle journal, knowing before they found the next body that something within the walls had shifted away from reason, away from life. Each man left that room, silent, shaken by the electric heaviness in the air, a taste of something lost, something eerily preserved. And although the keeper's eyes never closed, outside the wind screamed with all the unanswered horror of everything that would be found at the top of the stairs. The bodies were discovered on the stairwell, spiraling up toward the impossible cold of the lamp room. 2 keepers, men who had signed their lives to the sea and the solitude of the stone tower, now sprawled where they had fallen. One collapsed against the icy wall, his back bent as if under a burden he could not see, the other face down on the unforgiving steps, jaw pressed into the dust, his mouth gaping open and black as if packed with ash. There were no wounds on either man, no signs of disorder. Not a table overturned, not a lamp shattered nor a struggle scarred into the walls. Even their frozen fingers were curled, not into fists of the panic dying, but as though reaching for prayer, half turned toward those narrow windows that looked endlessly out to the sea. Outside, the wind thrashed against the stones with mindless violence, but within the walls, it was a silence that screamed. The men were as statues, arrested at their last breath, their faces caught between disbelief and resignation. The rescuers, hardened to the business of death, found themselves recoiling not from gore, but from the profound absence of all struggle, for here, the end had come without violence, cutting life away in a way so distant from the body that not even terror could follow. The stairwell spiral led upward into chill darkness, and with each careful step, the sense of uncanny order intensified. Drips echoed from above, each drop a metronome for the hush below. Then, with a final turn, the lamp room revealed itself, uncannily immaculate save for the lantern itself. The great glass lens gleamed, absurdly clear, and in its heart, a flame burned with steady calm, a steady, pinkish hue, faintly luminous, casting skin shadows the color of bruised roses. The air inside, however, was glacial, biting through clothing with the touch of a grave. Yet when the rescuers neared the beacon, they winced, for an impossible heat radiated from the lamp, repelling the frost yet not warming the room. The contradiction only deepened the sense of something fundamentally wrong, as if the lighthouse itself were equally alive and dead. On the small table bolted by the window, a logbook lay open, pages fluttering in the cross breeze. The last message etched with uneven strokes as the ink froze mid-word, they did not come from the sea. The pen, left resting atop the entry, trembled imperceptibly, as if remembering the hand that had last moved it. Below, the stairwell's silence grew heavier as the rescuers descended. The same strange absence marked every inch, every chair pulled neatly to the table, reports tidied, oil replenished in the lanterns, the crates stacked at the ready for the next supply run. It was a scene abandoned mid-breath, as though a whole day had simply frozen, as if time itself had thickened within these walls, cementing not just men's bodies, but their habits, their rituals, a frozen tableau preserved for no eyes at all. When the Coast Guard team emerged from the swollen silence of the lighthouse, snow swirling sharper and sharper around them, they left behind not only their radioed reports and relay signals, but a question that entered them deeply and would not let go. What force could enter, with neither violence nor pity, taking men from their posts, leaving no sign but cold and silence, making even those who found them doubt the evidence of their senses? Behind the shuttered glass, the burning beacon continued to pulse with its otherworldly pink, a heartbeat no longer human, spelling words for a sea that never answers, and a sky that swallows every plea. Over the coming days, the wind clawed at the lighthouse, the storm blew more snow in off the channel, and those tasked with bringing word to the mainland gathered only fragments. Some spoke of curses or old legends, of days when ancient rites outlived their witnesses on these cold, bare islands. Some speculated the keepers had been driven mad by the endless dark, the insistent beat of the lantern calling out to nothing through weeks of storm. Others, more quietly, whispered that whatever had visited the keepers had not come across the wild ocean, but from beneath the earth itself, out of the oldest fissures in the rocks, rising with the salt steam and the whistling dusk, to claim the lonely and the faithful in equal measure. Yet by the time the first week had passed, and the mainland learned both of the bodies and the strange, undying light, the snow had already begun to settle again, in the stairwell, on the upturned faces of the dead, and in the logbook that spoke, in that broken hand, for all the unsleeping terror the lighthouse had kept inside. The world would remember the case a long time, in headlines and haunted conversations, but only the stone, the sea, and the bitter wind ever truly knew what had happened, that winter at the edge of the world, in the year 1900. The cause of death was never determined. A chill, clinical mystery lingered after the bodies were brought down from the lighthouse and examined under feeble lamplight in the village post. The medical examiner, a man hardened by years spent among the drowned and the broken, confessed that these bodies disturbed him like no others. There were no marks of trauma, no trace of fire or poison. Their skin, he recorded in his careful, spidery hand, had taken on the density of wax, and exuded a faint scent of seawater and copper, unnatural for men who had not drowned. Their lips were pale, almost gray, and their eyes lusterless, like figures carved from tallow rather than once living keepers of the sea light. More troubling still, the head keeper was missing. He was neither among the dead nor anywhere on the island, though his coat was found neatly folded in the lamp room and his boots still at their place beside his bunk. There was no sign of a struggle, no blood, no sign of hasty withdrawal or violence. It was as though he had simply vanished, dissolved out of existence, leaving behind only the strange, lingering warmth by the great beacon and an entry in the logbook that spoke of things coming not from the sea. The investigations that followed were thorough, yet every lead collapsed into a tighter circle of impossibility. Officials arrived, stapling inquiries across the village, asking for sightings, for rumors, for anything strange seen in the restless December nights. The island itself was combed from cliffs to rocky grottos. The only hint lay at the edge, where the base of the lighthouse met the raw Atlantic. There, on the frozen stone, investigators found something so odd they hesitated before recording it: long, deep grooves in the rock, parallel and evenly spaced, as though enormous hands had dragged upward, gouging the surface as they climbed toward the lantern. Salt water, pooled in the cuts, froze overnight. The first to discover them claimed the ice shimmered fluorescent blue beneath the moonlight. No explanation sufficed. Some in the village muttered about currents and storms, about the possibility of a massive wave flinging the men off the cliffs. But no storm that week had been fierce enough, and besides, the rope left burned and the ordered supplies in the lamp room rebelled against any quick violence. The official record, eventually, stated death by misadventure, but no one truly believed it. Each man who had uncovered the corpses or marked the grooves on the rock lay awake at night for weeks, listening for the sound of fingers scratching the stone. As winter deepened, the story moved through the village in hushed tones: the cold bodies, the vanished keeper, the lamp that burned too hot yet gave no heat, the grooves that no tool on the island could reproduce. Some spoke of rituals, of the ancient spirits bound inside the cliffs, woken by the rhythmic light. Others, men made superstitious by loneliness and grief, believed that something old and nameless had risen from beneath, using the lighthouse as a doorway, reaching up from the black seam between sea and land. That night the logbook's last words acquired a new, ominous clarity: they did not come from the sea. In the weeks after, when the relief keepers returned to the lighthouse, the strange warmth lingered about the lamp room despite the perpetual frost. Every now and then, a new series of grooves would appear on the outermost foundation, glowing faintly at night as if marked by an unnatural hand. Months later, the missing keeper's coat remained untouched, gathering dust beside his bunk, a relic that no one dared move. Decades passed, and the lighthouse was automated, human presence reduced to the rare and the reluctant. Yet to this day, on the deepest winter nights, local fishermen claim to see a wavering figure on the rocks below the lamp, half shadow, half light, clawing upward as if answering a summons only the beacon can give. The cause of death was officially forgotten, the pain, the fear, the mystery sealed away by time and the crashing sea. But sometimes, on December nights, the wind changes over the stones and the grooves glow blue again, a silent reminder of that year when the island swallowed its secrets and refused to give them back. The cause of death was never determined by investigators, sowing deep turmoil and mystery that only thickened with time. The official autopsy reported no external wounds, no burns, and no indication of poisoning. Instead, the medical examiner, an experienced professional unshaken by most deaths, was unsettled by a strange quality to the corpses. Their flesh, he wrote cryptically, had taken on the density of wax, and a faint but persistent smell of seawater mixed with copper lingered around the bodies, an odd and unnatural scent given that the men had not drowned. The head keeper, however, was never found. His absence was as baffling as the fate of the 3 men who had died. Investigators scoured the cliffs and surrounding terrain of the lighthouse island, pushing beyond the rough terrain and cold sea spray. Yet their search yielded no trace of the missing man, only a series of odd, deep grooves marking the rocks below the lighthouse, long, parallel impressions that seem to have been gouged by enormous hands reaching up through the stone itself. These marks defied simple explanation, suggesting either a great natural force or something far more sinister lurking just beneath the surface. Over time, officials sought to dismiss the case quietly. The official record claimed death by accident or misadventure, but whispers circled among locals and seafarers who spoke of ancient curses tied to the lighthouse. Some claimed the cliffs themselves were alive, that beneath their jagged edges and frozen moss, unseen forces waited, bending water and wind to their will. The lighthouse, it was said, became a gateway, pulling the souls of the faithful and the unlucky alike into the mist. This silence, broken only by the howling gales and crashing waves, grew heavier as winter tightened its grip on the island. Rescue parties visiting the lighthouse reported a peculiar atmosphere. An eerie warmth in the icy lamp room struck a stark contrast to the biting cold outside. New strange markings appeared sporadically, glowing faintly in the dark like ghostly signatures left behind by an unseen force. The missing keeper's coat and boots sat undisturbed by the fire or rain, abandoned and frozen in a moment beyond time. The mystery reverberated far beyond the rocky shores. Stories of shadowy figures clawing up steep stone faces under moonlight traveled on the lips of fishermen, specters that nothing but the lighthouse's strange beacon could wake. Decades later, the truth remains elusive. The fate of the keepers, the meaning of the glowing grooves, and the nature of the haunting light remain locked behind cold stone and rolling fog. Yet deep in the night, when the air is sharp with salt and the waves roar in memory, the lighthouse's otherworldly pull still seems to whisper of those who vanished, and the sea's terrible hunger for secrets long buried beneath the storm. The records of the St. James Lighthouse were officially closed before the dawn of the 20th century, its mysteries sealed away from public gaze. Yet even in the maps and charts used by modern vessels, that notorious stretch of coastline is marked with quiet warnings, that the waters there remain cursed. Locals and sailors alike speak of the island with caution, their voices dropping when recounting the strange occurrences that persist long after the keepers vanished. Every December, without fail, as the wind shifts and the nights stretch into infinite darkness, a faint light emerges on the horizon where the lighthouse once stood. It burns steadily for exactly 13 minutes, flickering twice before vanishing into darkness. This spectral signal is far from random, say the eyewitnesses. They swear the flashes are not cast out to sea, they swing downward toward the jagged cliffs, as if answering an unseen call rising up from deep beneath the stone. Fishermen nearby say the light carries the whispers of those lost keepers, their spectral vigil continuing beyond death's grasp. The glow is cooler than fire, a ghostly pink flame that defies earthly explanation, pulsing with the heartbeat of a place caught between this world and the next. Those who have gazed upon it tell of an ineffable sorrow riding the coastal wind, a longing that fills the air with the weight of unfinished duty and unanswered calls. Despite decades of technological progress, the spirit of St. James endures in that eerie rhythm, in the sway of crashing tides, and in the silence between the waves. Ships navigating close to the island do so with a respectful distance, guided not solely by maps or instruments, but by the timeless fear and awe inspired by a light that burns for the lost and calls from the depths, a reminder that some lighthouses guide spirits as much as sailors, and some mysteries, no matter how deep they sink, can never be extinguished.